Welcome to Lit Happens, Saskatchewan's showcase of the literary talent of the province. We're out on location today at Collector's Edge on 1st Avenue in Saskatoon. We're below the Capitol Music Club, and there's actually band rehearsal going on right now as we speak. And welcome to the show, Danica Lorer. I am so happy you're here. You and I are going to just talk through this band rehearsal, and it's going to be background music for our conversation. So.
Sounds good.
Great. So I'm so happy you're here because we're not going to talk about a book today. And these are my favorite episodes of Lit Happens, is where we just move off the cuff a bit and talk about the broader spectrum of storytelling. And I think you are the master. You are the poster girl for oral storytelling in Saskatchewan right now. And tell us a little bit about that. Tell us a little bit about the actual history of oral storytelling.
Oh my, well, oral storytelling goes back as far as there have been people.
Yeah.
It's before there were rocks and caves to write on, people told stories. It's how they taught, it's how they expressed lessons to their children, it's how they told people what happened in the past so that we could know what to do for the future. And I like being the poster child for storytellers in Saskatchewan, but we have an incredible group of storytellers in this province. Of many ages. We have people who tell stories throughout Saskatchewan and throughout the rest of the country. I was lucky enough last year to go to the Toronto area as part of the Canadian Children's Book Week book tour, and I was chosen by the Storytellers of Canada, Contour de Canada, and one of 3 storytellers from across the country who got to spend a week telling stories to children as part of Canadian Children's Book Week. So
what an honor.
It was a great honor. It was a great opportunity. I did 30 libraries last summer, and I think I have about 16 booked this summer already.
Really?
So, yeah, so I'm starting to get the emails this week to build. You always, as a storyteller, it's not a 9 to 5. It's sort of, it's constantly self-promoting and finding new markets. And this time of year, it always feels like, oh, am I going to get any gigs this year? But it's starting to come. I've got an interesting gig coming up in Regina in a couple of months. That's at the Sask Communications Forum. So, talking to communicators about injecting storytelling into their presentations. I'm one of these people who doesn't learn anything from PowerPoints and handouts. Right. But if somebody tells me a story, I'm going to remember what they're talking about.
And is that what drew you in? Like, you're a real proponent for storytelling, probably the biggest one that I know of in Saskatchewan. What brought you to this world to begin with?
It was really organic. I just fell into storytelling. I didn't grow up with people who told fairy tales and folk tales like many of the storytellers I know from across the country. I grew up where there was a kitchen table and I wanted to hear what was going on. I wanted to know what was going on in town. I wanted to know what was going on in the family, who was having babies, who was getting married, those sorts of things.
Right.
We also camped. My extended family would get together and we'd go camping every summer. And those times around the campfire was where you'd hear the little secrets and you'd hear stories of, the hints of somebody might have seen a UFO or somebody might have seen some tracks, Sasquatch tracks or something. So there were always these little interesting things. So I never wanted to go to bed. And we'd always get shuffled off to bed. And you knew that after the kids went to bed, the stories probably got even better.
Probably.
And I remember leaving that campfire at night and wishing I could stay and getting up the next morning. And usually there'd just be 2 lawn chairs left by the fire.
Oh, I love that.
And those 2 lawn chairs would kind of be leaned in towards each other, almost bent towards each other. And you'd figure that was the scene left by the last 2. And they had to just lean closer and closer as it got later and later and darker and darker.
Yeah.
And then those would be the last 2 who would go to bed.
Yeah.
And it's a great image for me, and it's sort of where storytelling came from for me. I've used it in all of the jobs I've ever had.
Yeah.
As you say, I'm an advocate for the art form because people don't understand storytelling. When I say I'm a storyteller, they say, oh, you go and read stories to kids in libraries, and that's not it at all. It's something that's constantly evolving. It's not on the page. It's not me taking somebody else's story. Even when I tell traditional stories, there's a part of me that's injected in those stories. But most of the stories I tell are stories that are my own stories, and they come from imagination, they come from my experiences, a lot of them rooted right here in this place.
Wow.
Under the pine trees or under the shadow of the grain bins of my
Wow.
uncle's farms.
Wow,
You know, so
what a visual. I love it.
thank you.
No, actually, you and I recently did a gig together, which really I found fascinating. We were at St. Paul's Hospital, and you and I did a storytelling gig right there in the middle of the hospital.
Yeah.
And I felt inadequate. In a good way. Because I had my book, and all I had to do was stand there and read from it, which is super easy. I do it all the time, but you didn't have a book between you and the audience, and you just wowed the crowd, and you made them swoon. So there must be a lot of rehearsal involved, and fine-tuning and all that sort of thing.
There is. A lot of people think that storytellers just go in and off the cuff. It's just something that comes off the cuff, and it definitely isn't that. When an idea for a story starts to percolate in my mind, you know, I play with it like a writer, and I develop those characters, and I get to know them, and I do a lot of driving back and forth across the province.
That's true.
And I'll take my camera and I'll press the record button, and I'll tell the stories to myself as I'm developing them, and then I'll listen back to them and see where there's something to play with. And even if I've told a story 50 times, each time I tell it, it's a little bit different because
Right.
my audience is a little bit different.
That's true.
And it's really important for it to continue to evolve. And sometimes I tell a story, and it's a good story, and then something will just come into my head when I'm looking at a certain face in the crowd, and then that becomes my favorite part of the story for a while.
Right.
So it's really exciting to be a part of something that, you know, comes out of me but is more than me, and it makes heart-to-heart connections. Like so many times I see people and they're on their devices, and, you know, everybody sees that.
Everybody
and
is.
there's the texting, and you know, it's great that people are communicating, but there's something that's so special with a heart-to-heart, ear-to-mouth that's happening eye to eye, that's so important as human beings. I was in some of these great big schools in suburban Toronto. I was telling you about that. And there were maybe 175 kids sitting on the floor, shoulder to shoulder, for 45 minutes, 55 minutes, listening to the stories. These are kids who, you know, as soon as they leave there, they're going to be on the computers, they're going to be on their phones, and they just sat there wide-eyed and listened that whole time without, you know, they weren't punching each other, they weren't complaining like adults would be if they were sitting on the floor for that long.
Yeah.
So it's really, there's something that's incredibly special about the gift of being able to tell people stories. And so I'm really grateful for what I get to do.
And I'm grateful there's people like you, because there has to be people like you in the world.
Yeah.
Now, I know we're just about out of time, but just tell us a quick overview of the different organizations you belong to, and maybe their web addresses.
Okay, I'm really bad with remembering web addresses, but I know search engines work.
Search engines work.
So I'm part of the Saskatchewan Writers Guild, and so there are a few of the storytellers within, when you look at the members list, there are a few storytellers in that list.
Okay.
I'm part of the Storytellers of Canada, Contour de Canada. It's a nationwide organization with about 400 members. Most of us are professional storytellers, and so there's a little bit of information about what storytelling is, how to get involved in storytelling wherever you are across Canada, and some of the events that are coming up. I'm part of the Saskatoon Storytellers Guild, and you can search us as well. And we actually meet once a month as a regular meeting at the Unitarian Church, the third Friday of every month, and it's at 7:30. So everyone's welcome to come, and there's always a theme, and so we get together, and some of the people there are professional storytellers, some are people who just like to listen, and some are just people who want to, you know, share a few stories and a few laughs, and we have a lot of fun together.
Nice. And I also happen to know that you check your Facebook account several times a day, 'cause I think that's how you basically run your business is a lot through that. So.
I get a lot of business through Facebook, so that's just through my name, Danica Lorer. You can find me there. It's the oral tradition, so most of my work comes from word of mouth. People have heard of me, and they seek me out and find me. And I love telling stories to people of all ages, not just kids. I've done some great gigs, and like we had a great time at the hospital. I've been in seniors' homes. I've been at July 1st celebrations, sports days, you know, a car dealership Christmas party, telling stories. So there's every place where people gather, there's room for storytellers and stories.
Absolutely. There isn't a doubt in my mind that you're not fulfilling your life purpose. There's no doubt. So I know we're out of time. I just want to thank you for coming down here to Collector's Edge today and putting up with the band rehearsal upstairs at Capitol Music, which was actually quite nice. And hopefully we can get you on again.
Awesome. Thanks, Wes.
That's all the time we have today for Lit Happens. If you enjoyed today's episode, you can see previous segments on Shaw TV or on my website, westfunk.ca, and you can connect with me online on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And I'll see you next time on Lit Happens.